Hi, I'm going to be doing a short comparison review of three watches here. The reason I'm doing this video is not because I'm planning on starting a channel or anything like that. It's just I appreciate seeing other comparison reviews. I'm a normal watch guy, and I'm shopping at home, and it really helps for me to see watches that I'm interested in next to each other, and I can compare them. And I really like hearing the what people like, and especially what they don't like about watches, because that's not information that you usually get. You usually get a lot of information about why people like different watches. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of share what I think about the three of these watches. This is the Steinhart OVM, the first generation black dial, and this is the Christopher Ward C60 Trident Mark II, and this is the Oris Aquis. And I think these three are three of the best dive watches that you can get for under $1,000. If I could have any other watch, I would probably add the Squall 50 Atmos to this lineup if I had it, because I really like that one too. But these are three of the top ones, I think, and I really struggled myself on which one to keep, because for me, my budget is limited, so I can really only keep one of these. And so that's why I'm doing this, and I thought it would be nice of me to kind of share my thoughts with YouTube. And so let's go ahead and get started here. So this is the Steinhart OVM. It's a fantastic watch. It originally sold for $400 or $500 new, but this black dial model is getting rarer because it's discontinued. So they're selling for a little more than that now, and I really like this watch. There are a number of things I like about it. First of all, the bracelet is a decent bracelet. It's solid. It is not a top quality bracelet. The Aquis, which I'll get to in a second, the Aquis bracelet is absolutely fantastic. It is so good. And this one is not that good, but it's decent. It's I had a Seiko Sumo, and that bracelet is just terrible. It's just terrible. So this is definitely usable. So I like the bracelet, even though I don't quite love it. What I do love about this watch is I love the dome crystal. The dome crystal, I've found personally that a dome crystal really just adds a certain beauty to a watch that I've come to really value after 4 or 5 years of watch collecting and going through over probably about 20 watches. I find I really prefer dome crystals. And the thing that I don't like here, the C60 has a flat crystal. What I don't like about flat crystals is that sometimes you look at your watch and this is what you see. The whole thing is just gray, and it's like that. It's like that fairly often. If it looked like this every time I looked at it, that'd be wonderful. I mean, I would probably like this watch a lot more. But because of that flat crystal, I've just found personally that I'm just not a fan of flat crystals. And this Steinhart though has a amazing crystal. I love it. It's fantastic. The reflections are really pretty, and it's pretty clear looking at it most of the time. And that's probably the thing I like about the Steinhart more than anything else, is that it doesn't really have bad lighting. And that sounds interesting, but I've found over the course of years collecting, you can make almost any watch look good in the right lighting. And if you take a photo in that light, you can make almost any watch look pretty good. But the question for me is how it looks in lighting that doesn't really suit it. And I found that the Steinhart looks pretty good in most lighting. This is actually my second OVM. I sold one a while ago that I owned early on in my watch collecting, and I've kind of missed it since then. And so I got another one recently. And I really have grown to appreciate that aspect. Now, the other thing is I like the circular markers. Circular markers have kind of grown on me. The other watches here are, baton or stick indices. I like these round indices. They really say dive watch to me. And so I like that. I like the lume, the aged lume. It's made to look aged. I like that. I just like the color scheme of it. I think it looks pretty nice. Now the downside of this watch are there's two things. The bezel is not a ceramic bezel. It is a aluminum bezel, which can scratch and get faded over time and all that. Now, the mitigating factor here is that Steinhart sells this bezel for, I think, 15 euros on its website, which makes it not an issue at all anymore. Because, if you get an Omega, a Bond Seamaster with the aluminum bezel and that thing gets faded and you want to replace it, you're going to pay a whole lot for that. And with this, I'm not too worried about marking up the bezel because I can always replace it for not too much money, which is a definite plus, actually. And the other minus on this watch is that it tends to wear big. It's 42 millimeter case size, which is usually about perfect for me. This wears a little bit big. Now, I've got a 7-inch wrist, and for me, my wrist is kind of flat, so it's kind of a big 7-inch, and this is about as big as I would wear it. The lugs are pretty flat. They don't really round down, which is a definite minus. If you have a smaller wrist, I probably would not go with this watch. I mean, that all depends on how you like to wear your watches. Some people like it looking pretty big, but this is about as big as I would go personally, and that can be a negative. But for me, it's not so big of a deal, right? So overall, it's a pretty good watch. And the last thing I really like about it is that the price is going up. It's discontinued, so the price will probably keep going up unless Steinhart decides to go back to a black dial. I don't know if they're thinking about that. All right, the second watch is the C60 Trident. The C60 is a fantastic watch. It's got all the features you want. It's got 600 meters of water resistance, which is double the Steinhart. It's got a ceramic bezel. Sorry, I should have mentioned the bezel on this watch and on the Steinhart are both top-notch bezels. They're fantastic bezels. They're really good. There's not much play, but the bezel action is nice. It's not too difficult to turn. It's just a great bezel. Now, it's a ceramic bezel, which is a plus. But for me, on this one, for whatever reason, it looks a little plasticky. Now, I know a lot of ceramic bezels can look like that, so it doesn't bother a bunch of people. But for me, it does bother me a little bit. I've found that, it just makes the watch look a little cheaper. And that's something that I don't like about this watch. The other thing that I don't like about it, the wave pattern dial. In this light, the wave pattern is very subtle and it looks not too bad. But in other lighting, I've seen it where the wave pattern is really prominent and not in a flattering way. And again, in the right light, this watch is amazing. It looks fantastic. It's got all these great features, but in the wrong lighting, I don't like the way this one looks, and that's a major negative for me. I've found that watches, they're jewelry essentially. So really, 80% of the reason why a watch is a great watch is if you love the looks. It's mostly about looks here, and this watch. I do love the looks in some lighting, and in some lighting I don't like it as much. Now, other aspects, the case is beautiful. I love the looks of the case. The crown is really cool, that polish and brush, and it's really solid, very solid crown. The movement in here, I should mention, in all of these is about equivalent. This one has an ETA 2824. This one has either an ETA 2824 or a Sellita SW200, and this has a Sellita SW200. They're basically equivalent. For me, I prefer this movement. This is probably, my favorite movement, those two, because any watchmaker can service it. They're proven very reliable. And I personally see in-house movements as a negative. Now, I'm sure if my watch budget was much bigger, and I would probably change that view. But as it is with the limited budget, I like having a movement that is reliable and fairly easy to service. Okay, pretty good watch overall. And lastly, the Oris Aquis. This has been my daily wear, not daily, but this has been my most worn watch for the past, year. And it's a fantastic watch. Quality-wise, this watch is clearly a step above the other two, I think. It just has a solid feeling that really, when you feel it in hand, and when you look at it in person, it just looks like it's a better quality watch than the other two. And it's a fantastic quality watch. It's really great. The things that's what I like about it. The bracelet is, probably the best bracelet that I've owned in all my watches. And I tend to stick to watches under $1,000. And it's probably the best bracelet you can get for under $1,000. Now, I brushed these links. It normally comes polished, and you can see a little bit of polish because I brushed it with a Scotch pad, so it's not perfect. But I think it looks about 10 times better than it did with the polished links, and so I really like that. Now, the other thing I really like about the Aquis is the way it reflects light. I found that it's beautiful. The reflections on this are just so much nicer. I don't know why. I don't know why it's so much nicer than the Trident. I found the Trident tends to reflect like there's just the dial reflecting, and then there's just the bezel reflecting because they're at different angles. And this thing reflects it all, and it's just, I don't know why. It's just prettier. This watch at low light is the best looking watch at low light. But what I found is that if you put it into situations where there's more light on it, I'm trying to get it here, but there, for whatever reason, I've owned this watch for a while now, and I know that at this light, I don't like the looks as much. It's kind of a subtle thing, and it probably wouldn't bother a lot of people, but having owned this watch and wearing it really often, I find that in some lights, I look at it and I'm like, this is gorgeous. And some I look at it, I'm like, it looks really plain. It doesn't look as great as it normally does. And that, to me, has become, that it's a thing. Whereas before it wasn't. It looks really great on the wrist most of the time. But I tend to think this watch looks better off wrist than on wrist. It's a beautiful watch overall. But if it's not obvious, I've been thinking about which watch I would prefer, and I think I've decided that I think I like the Steinhart the best, which is surprising because in a lot of ways it's the cheapest and the probably least quality watch in some ways. That's a hard thing to quantify, but I found that I think I like it the best out of these three. The Oris, is probably in second place for me, and the Trident's in third. And I should reiterate that this is purely my opinion. Other people have reviewed these watches, and some people like the Trident the best out of all of them. For me, I think I prefer the Steinhart, and that opinion could change, but that's where I'm at right now. All right, that's all. Hope it helps.